So send an email to info@milesfranklin.com. Let them know Silver Slayer sent you. We have new deals every single Monday. I'll post a link in the description for this one, but every Monday. Right now, we have a quarter ounce of gold 2023 Eagles, which is here's a quarter ounce of gold right here. And we also have 5-ounce silver Nordic bars, which are only $1.99 over spot. So if you guys want some of these opportunities, make sure to hit up Miles Franklin. You guys know Andy if you've seen him on my channel. He's a great guy as well. So info@milesfranklin.com. I want to show you this interview with Michelle McCory. And by the way, guys, if you haven't seen Andy Scheckman's interview with Michelle McCory on Kitco News, you have to go watch it. It has 1.4 million views. They're talking about how BRICS missed a massive opportunity by not launching common currency now. And yeah, like I said, guy's name is Ken Oling. She's interviewing. But I want to share this section. Did the Jackson Hole crowd react to the BRICS announcement? There also is one before that, but it's very long. I didn't want to read through, watch this entire thing, but I want to hear your thoughts on this section.
So, while this was happening, as we said, we had the Jackson Hole Symposium, and many people were wanting to see if there was going to be any kind of acknowledgement of what was happening in South Africa from the central bankers gathered there. We didn't hear anything from Powell about this. Christine Lagarde did make some comment, some vague comment, didn't mention the BRICS specifically, but she did have this to say, and I'm quoting here. We're facing a deepening geopolitical divide and a global economy that is fragmenting into competing blocs. This is being accompanied by rising levels of protectionism as countries reconfigure their supply chains to align with new strategic goals. Over the past decade, the number of trade restrictions in place has increased tenfold, while industrial policies aimed at reshoring and friendshoring strategic industries are now multiplying. And while this has not yet led to deglobalization, evidence of changing trade patterns is mounting. What's your read on her comments there?
So I don't know if I even want to share his. I mean, I guess we could, but what are your thoughts on that?
You're seeing all of these agreements being made. When the BRICS, during the meeting, everyone was waiting for them to issue a common currency, and they came back and they said, look, we've tasked the finance ministers with going back to the drawing board, come back with a common currency idea next year. In the meantime, let's all agree to trade with one another in common currencies, in our local currencies. And so that's exactly what you're seeing. You saw India purchase 1 million barrels of oil from the United Arab Emirates a couple of weeks ago and settled the transaction in rupee. You have India and Saudi Arabia discussing ways to do business without using the US dollar, and they're going to do that for energy. You have the largest airport in Iran that is being a contract was won by a Chinese contractor to do its $1.2 billion refurbishment. They're paying for it in oil. You're seeing these countries like Brazil, the second largest exporter of corn in the world, trading with China only in real and in yuan. And so what you are seeing are all of these agreements. And now you see, Turkey, and I'll let you play the rest of the video, but just a couple more examples. Turkey was just told by the European Union that they can't expect to join the EU anytime soon. So Erogen, who wants to join BRICS anyway, said, well, if necessary, we'll part ways with the EU. They're going to start trading. Venezuela now is only going to trade with the BRICS blocs. And why would they not? They're being sanctioned by the West, just like Iran is being sanctioned by the West. And now they're part of the BRICS and the Belt Road and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And these countries, I would argue, are not making these relationships out of economic agreements. Yes, they are, but the real reason they're doing it is out of necessity, because the West and the US foreign policy is taking them out one at a time. And so that the rallying cry is, look what they're doing to everyone else. Let's all join together. And by the way, the ones that we're going to invite first just happen to be the ones that are very natural resource rich and the ones that are centered geographically in very key pivot points around the globe.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know, but China is actually the biggest consumer of silver as well. And it's just like everything you mentioned is so obvious to, I guess, people who know this stuff, but I always come from like, I always try to look from the perspective of someone who's never, never heard of the BRICS before, or have no idea what this stuff isn't a conspiracy. It's not a myth. This is happening, folks. Like this stuff is happening. Even if you don't want to admit it, or or you're like you're a patriot and say we could never do that. I mean, honestly, it's hard to believe someone would be that, close-minded, but this stuff is real. So I'm going to play the rest of this now.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a byproduct of first COVID and the awareness that happened when it came to supply chains breaking down. Then the war in the Ukraine, when you had this energy crisis in Europe, and now this idea that the BRICS are going to be able to sort of create a counterweight against the G7. So I think this is a byproduct of those three major trends. I think that it's just a matter of them stating the fact that they're very, very aware that these things are going to happen or that are happening. And they are putting policies in place to make sure that they can minimize America's sort of a negative impact on the U.S. when these things or how these things happen. I mean, the U.S. has been the sort of center of global trade, and they have the institutions to be able to protect this. So they have the infrastructure, they have the assets, they have everything that they need to be able to play in this space, and they're going to play very, very hard. So I think that it's a kind of a bullish statement saying that they're aware of these things and they're up for the challenge. The U.S. is still going to push, still going to be a powerhouse, and not to count them out, especially when it comes to global trade.
Do you think that behind closed doors, the tone taken about this BRICS expansion is different?
Yeah, if I would guess that, going in, you saw the statements that were sort of the answer to the Brazilian president about the BRICS currency, and them saying that, no, it is not going to be discussed. I think that they were just elated by this sort of response. And so internally, they could stop focusing on sort of having to deal with this kind of external or existential dollar crisis. And they could focus on, the US economy. They could focus on how to better handle their trade relations and how to build and shore up existing trade relations. So I think that all in all, it was a good day for the people at Jackson Hole. When it came to international geopolitics and economics, but now they have to focus on what's happening in the U.S.
Okay, so what did you think about that?
I don't think I mean, he seems like a bright guy, but that's the problem with the US and the West. They're very short-sighted. Oh, great, they didn't announce the common currency. Yippee. Well, that's just bullshit. I mean, you have, I believe, India and China, all of the BRICS are negotiating to abandon the US dollar and bilateral trade until the new common currency is issued. The finance ministers were told to go to the drawing board and come back to the table with their ideas next year. You have to understand, I mean, think of Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi. They deviated from the Western plan and they were taken out. And this is a deal where they're going to do things. Look, I don't think we're going to go to war with Russia and China, two of the three largest nuclear arsenals in the world, and the BRICS countries. But what I do think is that this is a very, 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 very big deal. And in order to do it the right way, you have to think in terms of years, in terms of decades. This BRICS deal has been going on for 17 years. What has accelerated it more than most people understand is the weaponizing of the dollar and all of these sanctions. This is what is bringing everyone in a expedited fashion. Let me in, like Venezuela. And it's going to happen. They are trading, they are abandoning the US dollar. And all of these countries are putting their local currencies before the dollar in trade, and they will come back with a joint settlement currency next year. That was what they said. Now, it's going to happen. The fact that all of the countries that are in the BRICS are the ones that either produce or accumulate all the metal and commodities and rare earths and hydrocarbons and oils and all of these things, that's besides the point. The finance minister from Russia has told us for over 2 years it will be backed by something. We know it will be a marriage of blockchain and gold and who knows what else, but it's coming, and the West can do or say whatever they want. They've damaged their reputation and their trustworthiness too much to ever come back, as far as I'm concerned. And that's why you're seeing a lot of our allies break ranks, like France, who said, "Can I come? Can I come? Can I come to the meeting in Johannesburg?" And they turned him down. But a few weeks before that, he did a 50-point trade agreement with China, all the way up from 5G to military engagement, and denounced the West and the war in the Ukraine. And said we will have nothing to do with any aggression of Taiwan. And, you have sides being chosen. You have Mexico. Our relations with them are not good, and they have formally expressed interest in joining the BRICS. So these countries are doing things like, you can't have a common currency until you have a big enough sphere of countries to use it. It's the mass adoption that makes it work. If you only have a handful of countries that use it, it's not going to have the impact. So since the meeting, what's important to understand, and let me just find the exact number here, bear with me 1 second, but I want to say since the meeting, 27 countries, I want to say, I'm almost positive, let's just say it's roughly, I don't know where I put it, but it's roughly 27 countries since the meeting have formally expressed their interest in joining, and another 22 or 3 have informally. You could possibly have 50 countries admitted more by next year. And you're talking, when you add in all of the countries with the Belt Road, the BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Eurasian Economic Union, Russia's a member of all of them. Saudi Arabia is in the BRICS, the Belt Road, the SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. They've applied to the New Development Bank. I mean, they're all going to be together. You're talking the majority of human population. And when they then flip the switch, bang, we now are issuing our new settlement currency, and we're only taking that for oil, and everyone in the world dumps dollars. The West will have nothing to do but put their head between their legs and brace for impact.
That's the scariest part.
Yeah, it gave us a reprieve of a year, but to look at that as a good day for the West is just delaying the inevitable. It's like, you're on the river and you're tied to a raft and you can hear the falls coming. Remember, I've talked about logarithmic decay, little by little by little by little by little by little by little, bang, all at once. Well, where are we on that river? I mean, how many pieces can you pull out of the Jenga tower before the whole damn thing falls over? All of these countries working with one another outside the dollar, joining together. The majority of the world's rare earth metals and oil and all of the things needed to run an economy, country. We're incentivizing it. And I think that what he said is true, but it doesn't give me any peace of mind. It just, when they finally come back with the right path, it'll be one that will be very difficult to derail.
Yeah. See, when I hear people say stuff like that, it reminds me of like when the dollar index is up or it's stronger and people are gaining hope in it. It's like, how, do you guys realize the dollar's lost 98% of its original purchasing power and we're $32 trillion in debt? Like, do you guys understand that? It's funny to me.
Well, not only 32 trillion in debt, I mean, let's call it what it really is. If you want to know what it really is, it's now 33 trillion in debt plus 120 plus trillion in Medicare, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and government military pensions, 77 trillion shortfall in Social Security alone. So that's $155 trillion. And if you look and see what is the asset base of the United States, it's 5 trillion. The largest single asset, 1.6 trillion student debt, 40% of our assets. Google it, pop right up.
Yeah,
what is the largest asset of the United States? Student debt, $1.6 trillion. And while you're on Google, do it right now.
Is it up right now?
What is the largest asset of the United States government?
Can you see the screen right now?
Yeah.
The U.S. debt clock?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. US national debt 33 trillion, debt per citizen is $98,000, debt per taxpayer 255,000. US Federal Reserve spending is at trillion, 6 trillion, 116 billion, 954 million, 222,000.
And that doesn't even have the unfunded liabilities there, does it?
I don't know. I know you can dig deeper into this. Like you see down here, it goes mortgage loan cap, gold, supply and demand, home sales source. Like you could even go to precious metals and you can look each state, world precious metals production 2020 year to day, and it shows each country as well how much reserves they like. This site is really interesting. Like when you dig a little deeper into it. When I say
Type into Google one time, what is the largest asset of the US government? Oh, there you go. Student loans. Yeah. It's they consider that an asset. So we have 155 trillion in debt when
that's
you add
insane.
When you add on top of Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and government military pensions on top of the 33 trillion, we're 155 trillion in debt with 5 trillion in assets. That 1.6 trillion in student debt, which is a record, is the largest asset of the US, and they consider it an asset because you can't bankrupt yourself out of it. When Biden talks about forgiving student debt, he's forgiving the fingernail on the body. He's a tiny little bit to make himself look good, just like draining the strategic stockpile of oil to make inflation go lower. My nephew, my niece's husband, greatest guy in the world, worked his ass off, comes from nothing, and he's now 35, 6 years old, and spent his entire adult life working his ass off to pay off his student debt. He'd like to jump through the TV screen every time he hears Biden say that. It's not fair. It's not right. And yes, what isn't right is the cost of college. That's true. But to forgive it for some and not for others who had to scrape to get to where they are, it's not right. And everything our administration is doing is ass backwards and or bass backwards, however you want to say it.
I had no idea. I had no idea about that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's a crazy, crazy time, my friend. And that's why we own silver. We do not buy silver to get wealthy. Silver is wealth.
That is
enough, you'll be wealthy. You do not buy it and hope it goes to $500.
Right.
If you do, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if that is the case, then the consequences of that.
If you can find a McDonald's hamburger, if they have any, it'll probably be $20 a hamburger.
Right.
I mean, you know, what will a can of Coke be? $7? Those kinds of things. So yeah, let's just be careful what we wish for. But it's been wealth that has outlived everything the world's ever thrown at it for 5,000 years.
Yeah.
And it's in the Bible, and it's outlived world wars and hyperinflation and Great Depression and pandemics, and it's still massively desired, accumulated, and needed in the world. So that's why you own it.